Welcome to the clashing of steel. And as it is with most cavalry, patience will always remain the key. Some, like the barbarian horsemen, they also have the mobility and they need to use every engagement, every situation they have. But even they may sometimes need to be patient before they can get to that very engagement they want. With the Greek cavalry, I do not have the resilience to stay in fight. I do not have the mobility. But everything that the Greek horsemen lack, they try to make it up with the impact damage. And that can make a lot of difference. So I can already see a possible engagement. I actually don't want to go too aggressive. But then again, if I am to make this place work, I don't want to go too passive. But I am gonna use this moment. The moment I saw them turning back, I knew I was going to hammer. There was no other choice. That was a small, maybe 1 second choice that I could make. I just knew when they turned their back, I have a chance. And I used it. This is usually the aggression I don't suggest going for. Neither do I suggest blobbing like these barbarians here. To be honest, I never suggest going against spearmen with horsemen. But in some cases where their back is turned, you just have to use the moment to weaken them enough. Perhaps most what I've shown till this very moment might be opposite to the patience. Aggression, mobility, speed. It has its own part. But my idea is patience in the bigger picture. You can show some aggression and make some remarkable moves. Like these Falksmen here. Although it actually is a huge waste. Patience doesn't always mean that you need to wait for friendly troops to engage the opponents, although that is the plainest example of it. Patience can also be waiting for your opponents to make mistakes. Simply waiting for their focus to shift. This is pretty much the moment. They're going after the barbarian infantry, so they're probably not going to notice me before it is too late. I just don't understand how these guys can stand up after they ran with a long Greek spear and they fly 10 meters. That makes no sense, but it sure is fun to watch it happen. Well, since I ain't durable enough to stay in a fight, it is best if I would disengage from basically any fight. I just charge in, pull back out. Okay, there is an exception with the commander skill Anvil, where you send one unit in, use the Anvil, and then send other units in from different direction. That charge against the horsemen was definitely worth it. But I'm also going to use my charge against the spearmen. And before that, I used my other horsemen as the bait. I knew that they were stacked and they were using the phalanx, so I could easily understand that they would move in the same direction. And that is what I used against them. I used the terrain and their aggression. I watched closely how they moved, what were their actions, and what were their mistakes. The moment I understood that the spearman player didn't know exactly how to best move and cover its troops, I could hammer it for the second time. The swordsmen, they were focusing too heavily on, well, my friendly swordsmen, and I could use that against them. Although I could have probably hammered these swordsmen from the front for heavy impact damage, or decent impact damage, it was a lot more rewarding if their focus was shifted and I used their narrow-mindedness or poor awareness or defense against them. That is what Alexander is best for. You need to use all the backs that are turned towards you and hammer them if you can, without being baited into a trap, that is. And I was rather successful at it in this first part of the match. Although I could have actually done something else that I never liked to do, and stacked my units when I charged into the rear of the swordsmen. The reason I don't like to stack my horsemen is simple. If I should fail, the cost for that failure is huge. But then again, if you succeed, the reward can be extreme. All 3 units stacked charging into the rear of the swordsman can pretty much instantly wipe out a single unit. And well, since they're now covering all the bottlenecks on this side of the map, or this side of the hill, I don't have many other options I could do. So instead I'm gonna pull back and wait for them. It was incredible how much we actually accomplished. Although the swordsmen slightly failed when they tried to engage the spearmen, it was still interesting how they dealt with the swordsmen. Although I had a big dirty hand in the downfall of the swordsmen and the spearmen on my side of the map, it is great to see that other side has pushed through. Now what we have going on here is just a waiting game. We are waiting for them to find something that they want to deal with. Something other than me, that is. Reading your opponent's actions is the second most important part of successful gameplay with any unit type basically. So just to make it so far, I read and tried to understand how they act, so that I would have the advantage over them. Although sadly I could have been used elsewhere, taking down archers or other things of the sort, it was still rather important that we dealt with that side of the map, so it was somewhat important I was there. Although I'm sure that the light artillery could have easily supported them if they just would have moved out of their small bunker. And this is what I like to see. I'm going close and I'm pulling back out because I know something bad is going to happen. They used their charge and now it was my turn. And as usual, the reward was definitely worth it. Patience plays a big role, that is for sure. But you also need to be able to trick your opponents, and you need to be clever with how and where you act. I do actually fail here slightly by sending one of my units behind the rock, and it went the wrong way. That is bad. But fortunately I will still survive and can make a lot of difference in the end, or make a lot of score in the end. I just want to show that the front charge usually isn't worth it. I do hammer into them, I did some okay damage. Oh my god. I did little damage actually. It was okay, but it was little. So it usually isn't smart to charge in from the front of the swordsman. There might be an exception for the barbarian units, because they are unformed and the formed units seem to counter the charge at least more than the unformed units. There are only a few places where I can be nasty. And, well, most of them pretty much are over. We have weakened the swordsmen off, the spearmen are pretty much dying. And I do try to slow down these swordsmen for the barbarian infantry. Everything I have actually done so far hasn't given me a lot of score. I have been successful at weakening the opponents, I have done some incredible damage and some great support as well. But where I actually get a huge boost is when I go after all the remaining ranged units. We have shattered pretty much all of their infantry. If the ranged units would have been behind these swords or spearmen, they could have made a lot of difference. They could have flipped this match properly around. But since they went to their own devices or tried their own tactics or whatever, they basically lost all they had. They basically didn't make any difference where they were. If they would have been here and defended by them, they could have probably flipped this match around. I would have not been so comfortable engaging anyone. Because, well, I do not have shields with my Greek horsemen. And barbarians, well, they don't have any good form of arrow block or missile block. But I'm gonna skip to the fun part. This is where the swordsmen have been taken care of. I haven't lost anything else, it's mostly been running. And now is my turn to shine, taking down the light artilleries and the archers. And this is where my score gets a decent boost. Perhaps I could have been useful on this side of the map when all the swordsmen were going aggressively in, but I just wanted to take care of the side where I started. And well, this is where the match is pretty much over. I'm gonna use my horsemen to take down the light artilleries, the archers, and well, what else is there? So I'm gonna take a look at the scoreboard. That's nice. So I am not the best in my team, but it should come as no surprise when something like Germanicus has nearly 6,000 points in defense because of missile block. So I am the second, I did a lot of offense. I think a bit more than half of that was done on the archers and the light artillery. Everything else of that was done on the swordsmen and the spearmen. You can even see the Falksmen at the third place who were running after the archers when they were stacked. The opposing spearmen and the swordsmen, Leonidas and Germanicus, I harassed and annoyed, came 4th and 6th place. They couldn't do much because they left their rear or side exposed. my team's average score was twice the size of the opponent's. Basically, my team's average was around 4,400 points, while the opposing was 2,200. We did incredibly well against them. So I tried to use my horsemen the best I could. I tried to learn from my opponent's mistakes, I tried to use the mistakes against them, and the main focus was to attack the rear, and since I was rather patient with, or rather careful with my attacks, I also survived till the very end, where I was able to kill a lot of archers and some light artillery. Anyways, don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for watching.